What's going on, everybody? I've got Jeremy Pryor here from, well, lots of places, Family Inc., Family Teams. If you've been around this movement of integrating faith, life, family, work, chances are his name has come up. I got to know Jeremy, back when I was in college. My wife and I were really good friends with a few families in Oxford, Ohio, and there seemed to be this lack of segmentation between work and church and your family life and your friends. It all seemed to be this cohesive mix. And so the more I asked questions, it didn't take long for Jeremy's name to come up. So a lot of um, revelation that the Lord's put on his heart that he's brought to the Cincinnati area and around the world. So Jeremy, thanks for taking a few minutes to get together here.
Absolutely, Brady. So good to see you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So where I want to start with is I know you talk a lot about story in the way that you understand really any of the ventures that you dip your toe into. Tell me the story of how this whole idea of family integration from a faith perspective and a business perspective came to be.
Yeah, yeah. There's kind of two images. One that really from a faith perspective, and then the other from a business perspective. So the image that really got me from a faith perspective was when I was in Jerusalem. I was a 23-year-old single guy, and I saw a bunch of Orthodox Jews pushing. They're all men pushing their strollers with all these little kids in tow, and it really like that image of fathers being with kids and wanting to be with kids was just I saw so much fathers like integrated with children in the Middle East, both in the Arab and Jewish cultures. And I was just so inspired by it and blown away because I grew up in the Seattle area, and that was just not something that I was familiar with in the culture. So I got very excited and interested in the kind of what is the vision for family and fatherhood that drove that kind of integration. And yeah, it's a powerful thing to experience in that culture. I remember I took my kids back there probably 10 years later when we started having kids after I got married. I met my wife in Jerusalem. So, and we were there for a few months and we ducked into a little restaurant and there was a bar mitzvah going on. And it looked like the entire crowd of like 100 plus people had flown in from America for this one kid. And there was a moment in the bar mitzvah where the grandfather stood up and he looks at his grandson and reads the most incredible poem just like that he wrote for his grandson. And I remember it ended with a line something like, And now I know I will never die because a part of me lives on in you." And I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh. Could you imagine your grandfather in front of like all your family members,
Yeah.
flying into Jerusalem and put his hand on your shoulder and look you in the eye and like what that would do to your identity as a 13-year-old boy. I was just like, I was like, I'm in. I was like, whatever we're doing isn't working great, but that's amazing. So anyway, I've been very inspired by that kind of a cultural way of thinking about family and integrating faith and everything we believe. And so that's been a huge journey. And then the business journey kind of image was when we got our first investor for a company that we had started. He had three sons that worked in his businesses, and this particular family they owned like I think more than 10 companies. So they had invested in our business and we had a monthly board meeting. This man and his three sons came every single month. And so during the board meetings, he would often kind of times pause the meeting and turn to his sons and explain why he had asked that question or why he was looking for that report or, why he had made that statement. And it was really giving them the underlying principles behind that particular business element of his business philosophy. And I was so struck. One time I was just listening to him kind of give one of these ad hoc, short little lectures. And I was watching, I was like, I realized suddenly, oh my gosh, this guy spends more time with his sons in their 30s than almost any dad I know spends with their kids while they're still young and in their own house, right? As a young kid. And I was like, oh man, that's amazing. What would I have to do? And I was like in my late 20s. What would I have to do to build the kind of lifestyle that would be even an option for my kids if they wanted to work with me someday when they got to this age? And I just sort of slowly and steadily steered sort of my career or my work life in the direction where that would become an option. Not something I put a ton of pressure on my kids and say, hey, you need to work with me. It's just I think that's so amazing that when that happens, like what you get to experience with your dad, Brady. It's like I just think that's like such a cool story. It's so rare today, right? That we get to experience that. So that really that image got me and kind of became a compass that I just sort of steered towards for the next 20 years.
That's really valuable. And like you said, Jeremy, that is so rare to have, much less at a youth, and um, being that presence, but also stopping the board meeting, telling a son, here's why I did that. There's so
Yeah.
much value in that. And there's so much from a bottom line perspective, sustainability and succession plan that comes with that when you have someone who is teed up, lined up, much like that grandfather said at the bar mitzvah of, I will never die because a part of me lives on with you. Well, this business and my style of running this business will never die because it
Yes.
lives on through you. And so
That's right.
it's the same, running in the same lines. And so for you, Jeremy, what does it look like to come alongside similar minded fathers and mothers who want to have that same part of same type of impact with their kids, to steer their compass in a similar direction that you did?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it starts with having that vision, right? Right. It begins with vision because what we don't realize is that we are steering already our family towards a vision, right? And most of the visions that we're currently most people are steering their family towards is a vision that they've never really thought about too deeply. It sort of was handed to them. Make sure that your kids graduate from college, make sure they get a good job, maybe not get into too much debt, like hang out with them on Christmas and maybe Thanksgiving after they get older. Those are the compass points that most people have in their heart when they're designing their lifestyle, having conversations with their kids, and beginning to prepare for their kids, the next stage in their kids' lives. And so if you're happy with that, then great. But if that's what the vision you want, but I mean, I think that there are probably other visions that a lot of people have never even seen or considered that they may prefer, right? They may prefer to have the kind of family that does have the opportunity to work together across generations. They may say to themselves, "Why would I want to spend the most important hours of my days for the rest of my life with people that I'm not in very close relationship with? Would I prefer to integrate that experience of my 7 8 hours of workday in a more cohesive way with my family, with my spouse or with my adult kids someday, or and so this is a vision that a lot of people have just never really thought about. In our case too, just things like meals, like we're very big in crafting a weekly multi-generational meal that my parents come to, and that our kids can't wait to bring their kids to. Now my grandson comes to every week. So I think, and I never would have known to even design this into our lifestyle if I hadn't seen it, right? And so we had lived in Jerusalem, and this is where I saw so many of these things played out in a healthy way. I think a lot of people too in the West that we've seen this stuff maybe in a really unhealthy way, really manipulative parents or toxic relationships across generations, or you're like, I can't get far enough away, and I get it. I know everyone has their own different family experiences, but I think that especially when you're thinking downstream, you need to think through what like you need to think 10, 20 years ahead, because the kinds of decisions you're making now, it is designing that experience with your family in the future. And I think that we don't think about it far enough ahead. And so that's what I encourage people to do is say, okay, it starts with a vision. Do you want to have that kind of lifestyle where you are integrated or have the option to be more integrated with your adult children? It's probably not a good idea to start thinking about that when they turn 18. Like, it's really good to think about that when your kids are 5 or 10, because it could really subtly change the kinds of things you do in terms of work. There are a lot of jobs that if you play them out over 10 or 20 years, the career you're aiming at is going to actually make family integration virtually impossible when your kids are becoming adults, when they're turning, let's say, 25, and they're done with school and they're ready to rock, in their career or in some kind of work situation. And you're like, oh well, I'm kind of I'm locked into a corporate job that allows for zero integration. Well, you can oftentimes know that, 20 years in advance, that that's where you're headed. And so you can make a choice. And so that's why what we've been telling families is it's not easy, but if you decide, hey, I really want to start to move in a different direction, I have been none of us went to our career counselor's office when we were in high school or college and said, hey, I just want to pick the career that is most likely to cause me to be as integrated with my adult children as possible. Like that wasn't one of the check boxes, right? On the questionnaire. And so because of that, most of us have never thought about this deeply or seen the options. So I would say another thing that I always tell people is if you see somebody that's 10 or 20 years ahead of you living the lifestyle that you would like to live in the next 10 or 20 years, please ask them questions. Like, don't just assume, oh, I hope that that happens someday. Like what I saw what this guy was doing, this sort of father of these adult sons, my investor, it was very important that I sit down and like actually study the whole pathway that got him there. And then I looked at my pathway and I'm like, ooh, is this more likely to get there or not? And so I think asking those kinds of questions and being aware of the trajectory of our work life and whether or not it's leading towards or away from integration is just a really important dynamic to consider. And that's where it starts with families.
I love that image because if you think of, take it all the way back to high school geometry class of a triangle, man. If you go at a, if this is a 90-degree angle and an 80-degree angle, if you're just right here, that's not that far away. But you take that over
Right.
the span of time of,
Yes.
30 years, all of a sudden what was really
Very
close to
far.
each other is way farther away. And it's so easy to do that. And the way that it always starts is having a reference point. That's where when we talk with people who are interested in entrepreneurship, who's an entrepreneur that you see living a life that you look at and say, man, that's what I
Right.
want my life to look
Yes.
like right now. 20 years from now, yes, but right now, I want a little bit of that in my mix, and that's where I'm really lucky having that in my family of my dad running his own business, and so it's that natural reference point. I'm walking on the trail that he blazed, but we all need someone like that, whether that's in our family or not. It's so crucial. And so the next question that comes to mind through this vision, having a reference point, integration, setting your protractor on an angle that's going to get you where you want to go. How do people think conceptually about what types of businesses would be a good fit for them? And how do you and your crew come alongside folks like that to help them?
Yeah. So it is really difficult when you enter into any kind of um, desire to build assets or start a business or own a business. Like it's sort of like walking down the cereal aisle and it's just like there are so many options. And so a big part of what you have to do is just start to really filter it down. And so there's lots of tools that we try to use to help people work through that filter. Probably the first tool is we have to help people overcome their misunderstanding about the nature of business ownership. So most people, when they think about being a business owner, they think of a particularly entrepreneurial person, somebody who's a creative and problem solver, and is hyper optimistic. And so then they think about things like Shark Tank, somebody who's invented some kind of very unique product, or they think about tech startups like Google, and they're like, I can't be an entrepreneur. Like that's what it takes apparently. But there, of course, if those of us who understand business ownership, we know that there are a tiny percentage of the total number of actual businesses owned. The vast majority of people who own their own business own small regional service-based businesses of some kind, and there are so many of those available, and many of them, make well over $1 million a year in gross revenue and can be very profitable for a family and can lead to incredible opportunity for family freedom and integration. And so that's the first step for a lot of people is just like understanding, hey, there's a big variety out there. And we talk about, we always say in Family Inc., businesses come in threes. And so we encourage people to actually start 3 businesses over the course of their journey if they really want to get to a place of real integration and financial freedom. And so the first is that you learn business on a simple service-based business. Then you can invest in a scale business, something that could that is less tied to your time. Oftentimes, service-based businesses can be a little bit intense on the schedule or on the sort of the freedom values of families. But then if you pivot from all of that knowledge, and oftentimes a related field or even under the same business, you can create a scale version of of that business, and then a legacy business, which is your investment thesis. How is money going to make money for your family? Like, what are you going to invest in? Is it going to be real estate or paper assets or whatever? But we really encourage people to think about that as a third business that they own and that they start, after they've created the first two. So that's a big part of our framework. But we want to put a lot of focus on, making sure that they get that first business success, like picking the kind of business that's most likely to be successful for, their personality, for their makeup. And then from there, yeah, there's all kinds of great tools as well. I love like that. There's the purpose sort of Venn diagram, like finding that overlap between things like, what could you make money at? What are you passionate about? What are you skilled at? Those things are really understanding kind of where those things overlap can really help figure out like you know, what is that sort of sweet spot? Not just asking what do I want to do, what am I passionate about, but you have to be really realistic about like what actually makes money. um, we talk about the filter between like region. Like if I coach a lot of people that are in small towns, and so I'm like, hey guys, when you're in a small town and you're starting to think about a service, you have to really think about competition, and you want to figure out like if you want to be a roofer and there's three roofers and there's population of 8,000 people, that might be pretty competitive. But there's nobody doing chimneys and everyone's like driving in from an hour away, then that can be a great option. And then what you guys got going on, Brady, at FriendNet, I love your entrepreneurial profiling process. A lot of our families have gone through your guys' process, and really identifying, hey, there are these different kind of styles, different types of business owners, and we're gonna profile and help you guys understand really where you're likely to be successful, and then pair you up with the kinds of businesses or a kind of franchise that might be a really good fit. Lots of our families have gone through your process and have found it super helpful. And so, yeah, there's lots of tools like that. We network with people to help our families get attached to, and then we take people through as well. And so those are some of the things that have been super helpful for us.
Absolutely. Well, we love working with Family Inc. families. There's so much overlap between what they're desiring and what we want to unlock for people. Is how can we unlock that next level of freedom? That means different things to different people, but for families who are wanting to bring a multi-generational element to what they're doing on a day in and day out basis, business ownership is oftentimes the vehicle that they need to get over that last hurdle, which is work. What are you doing from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday?
Yes.
Is there compatibility from what you're trying to do, big picture, in that time frame? So love all of that. In the few minutes we have remaining here, Jeremy, tell me a little bit about Family Inc. You mentioned it. Want to give you just a chance to talk about that programming because I'm a huge fan of it, and also talk a little bit about integrated and how people can get involved in what you have going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So me and my partner Jefferson Bethke, we started this organization called Family Teams. And so this is the whole idea that people that are looking to really live a life of integration with their family and actually think about their family as a multi-generational team on mission. This is something we really have derived from the Bible and believe is a blueprint right in scripture that oftentimes has been ignored by people. And so we've trained, thousands of families to think like a team. But what happens, like you just said, is that they get to a certain place and they're like, well, I really like my family team, but I'm stuck working over here with other people all the time. And I wish I could recapture some of that work time so that we could actually work together. I could work with my wife or husband. I can, maybe work someday with my adult kids. That was probably the number one question that we were getting from people that have been in the Family Teams ecosystem for a couple of years. They just started asking us so many questions about work. And so, but Jeff and I both started multiple companies. And so we're like, okay, we will walk you guys step by step through the process of exiting more traditional career paths into business ownership. And so that's why we started Family Inc. And so it's been going for about 3 years. And so we coach about 100 families every year through the steps. We have a 7-step called the family freedom path, where we're helping them walk through this. And so that consists of like all this content. We have a whole business library, of business ideas. We introduce them to guys like you, who can help them with business purchasing or franchise possibilities. And then so we were walking them through, like, trying to figure out what kind of business they want to start, and what are the ideas. And so we want to make sure that, I love when people come without ideas, because then we can start really by looking at, like, like you guys do, like, how are you built, and let's help you filter, this enormous catalog of possible business ideas down to something that you're really built to operate. I mean,
Mhm.
that's an amazing gift to give to people. And then I do 8 coaching calls a month with the Family Inc. families. So these are group coaching calls, so that you're constantly, and I've got a whole team of coaches that work with us. And so you're constantly, have some place to go with all your questions and creative problem solving. Because I think a lot of people, the whole Family Inc. thing was, part of it was, how do you help a hardworking, non-entrepreneurial family start this journey, and successfully achieve business ownership? That's really what I care about. I know entrepreneurs can figure it out, but 90% of people are not wired like an entrepreneur. And so I think that should not preclude them from business ownership. I think business ownership is a basic asset, that I think is just so valuable. And there was a time in history where everybody wanted to be a business owner. Everybody wanted to own land, and 70% of America was farmers before the turn of the 20th century. So I think that was just a good trajectory. So I love it when people choose that path. So that's Family Inc. And then, like you said, yeah, we do a thing called Integrated, which is a mastermind for business owning fathers who are trying to figure out, how do I integrate faith, family, and business. So we get together twice a year. Colorado Springs is just coming up this weekend. We're gonna see a bunch of guys there. Can't wait to see them. And then we're going to be in Nashville this next spring. And so, yeah, that's the program underneath Family Teams, that where we have these conversations about, okay, how do we push this to the next level? Because most of the guys in Integrated are successful business owners who are figuring out, okay, how do I maximize the opportunities that are created by business ownership? So, yeah, those are a
Mhm.
couple of our favorite projects.
That's good. Well, Jeremy, we could fill much more time with this. Maybe we'll have to do this again here in the coming months. Really appreciate all the insight you provide, and all the help you provide to families who are wanting to jump in the entrepreneurial game. Honored to partner with you, and keep up the good work, man.
Yeah, man. Brady, thank you so much for you and your dad and all that you've done for the families that we've been serving together. It's been a great journey, and we're excited to keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, see ya.